fighters that fought both Norris and Holyfield, I believe they fought me a little dirty. And
I want to talk about the Tyson Holyfield fights in 1996 and 1997. They kind of live on in the American collective consciousness and pop culture memory for a variety of reasons, the most prominent being that Tyson bit Holyfield's ear. But we tend to forget some of the circumstances of these two fights. Tyson had gotten out of prison for a rape conviction. He had a 3-year prison term. And when he got out of prison, after 3 long years, his boxing career was actually going pretty well. In prison, Tyson still worked out a lot. He still ran. He still lifted weights. However, he couldn't spar, so he couldn't really practice the sport of boxing. And Tyson himself talks in his autobiography, Undisputed Truth, a lot about how that worried him somewhat, the fact that he couldn't spar in prison, and how would that affect his career moving forward. But in fact, the first 4 fights that Tyson had out of prison went pretty well. He very quickly dispatched 4 opponents, all of whom were decent fighters, some better than others. The first fight, of course, was Peter McNeely, and that was kind of a farce for some reason, but Tyson knocked him out in the first round. Buster Mathis, Frank Bruno, Bruce Seldon, all like first round knockout or second or third round. So I think what happened is that Tyson got back this hubris that he had in the late 80s. So I think that's what happened going into the Holyfield fight, is that Tyson vastly underestimated Holyfield. But as Tyson discusses in his autobiography, there's more concrete reasons why Tyson underestimated Holyfield, and it wasn't just a matter of hubris. It was also based on Holyfield had a fight against a very light heavyweight called Bobby Sizz, who also happened to be a white guy, and Holyfield did not knock him out. And in fact, Bobby Sizz kind of held his own against Holyfield. Even though he was a small guy, Bobby Sizz actually did a good job, like it was a workmanlike job in that fight. But then he bizarrely said that his eyes were burning, and he stopped the fight.
Starting the third round, my eyes started to burn, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe I just got caught 1 or 2 good brazen shots, but then my nose and my lips started to burn. My eyes are killing me right now.
Very mysterious. And Holyfield's like, hey, man, I believe him if he says his eyes were burning, but I did not, do anything to burn his eyes. So very bizarre fight in which, despite this weird excuse that Sizz had, Sizz did unexpectedly well against Holyfield. Perhaps Tyson saw that and he said, Holyfield is not really someone that I'm very scared of. And that was misleading. That's number one. He underestimated Holyfield. Tyson didn't train as he should have. Holyfield, meanwhile, was training his ass off. And also, I believe, and a lot of people believe, Holyfield was on steroids. So the Holyfield that you see in the Tyson fight, number 1 and number 2, was like enormous. Not just like his muscles, but even his cranium like grew, which is common with steroids. So, I don't have evidence of that, but there actually is some evidence in existence that we'll discuss. Here's a headline from the New York Post back in 2007. Holyfield used alias to buy steroids. Former heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield was further implicated. It was a lab in Alabama, and someone by the name of Evan Fields raised some suspicion among investigators. The so-called Fields shares the same birth date as Holyfield, has a similar address, and when reporters called the phone number associated with those prescriptions, Holyfield answered. Holyfield on Wednesday vehemently denied ever using steroids. So again, this is from a headline in 2007, which Tyson also cites in his autobiography. So just to summarize, a steroid lab had a guy called Evan Fields on their list of patients, and all the personal data for Evan Fields seems to coincide with Evander Holyfield. I don't know how much more circumstantial evidence you could possibly want. And yet, strangely, you don't really hear this discussed too much in people discussing the Tyson Holyfield fights. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to make this video. I feel like Tyson he deserves to retrospectively be given some consideration based on Holyfield's apparent and alleged use of steroids. So Tyson against Holyfield, number one. Tyson didn't look that bad, actually. He just looked like he kind of got gassed in the later rounds. You know, when you think about it, that is the lack of training. That Tyson looked a little tired, and Holyfield looked a little tired in the later rounds too. But Holyfield had that like roided up strength that Tyson would hit him. Any other boxer would have been on the canvas, but Holyfield kept going. Look, Holyfield is, and was a great fighter, and he did demonstrate great boxing skills in both his fights against Tyson. So, like, I don't want to take that away from him, but if he was on steroids, like that's a pretty big asterisk in terms of these wins against Tyson. Now, here's a screenshot I took of the Tyson Holyfield fight number one in the third round when the ref is calling a timeout. And it's like, just take a look at Holyfield in this picture. His traps are enormous, his pecs, his arms. So something's going on there. And most revealingly, his actual head is bigger than it used to be. Okay? Take a look at Holyfield. Take a look at a picture of him when he was a middleweight in the mid-'80s. I mean, he had a pretty long career. He'd been around like Tyson. So I believe that this picture itself is pretty revealing in terms of Holyfield apparently using some extra legal means to get this physique. And I think that after having taken steroids, he was about equal in strength to Tyson, whereas Tyson was just naturally a strong person. And in the first 3 rounds of this first fight, it's like they were pretty much slugging each other. It was kind of even, and you could even say that Holyfield kind of had an edge that was apparent in these first 3 rounds, just due to his kind of superhuman strength. And Holyfield was also quick. But as I say, Tyson in this fight looked about as good as he did in his other fights after prison. That he looked quick and he looked strong. His technique was not the best, but I think any other fighter, he probably would have gotten the job done. Here's how Tyson put it in his autobiography. If you watched a tape of the fight, you'd see that Holyfield was clearly fighting a dirty fight, but he had the good guy image. He was the one who strolled to the ring singing gospel songs. It didn't make huge headlines when he was later implicated in a steroid ring out of Mobile, Alabama. So Tyson there referring both to the headbutting, which he alleges, and also the issue of steroids. Now, I'm emphasizing the steroid theory, but to hear Tyson discuss these fights, Tyson is really focused on the fact that Holyfield headbutted him in both fights. And it is beyond dispute that there was headbutting, that Holyfield headbutted Tyson. In both fights, it opened up a cut over Tyson's left eye, which Tyson had suffered from sparring. And it was just kind of reopened up, and it's like it's pretty hard to fight when you have an open cut over your eye, and it pretty much kind of sealed Tyson's fate in both the fights. So right here, apparently there was a headbutt from Holyfield coming up, which Tyson will complain to the ref about. And Tyson looked pretty good in the first 2 rounds, but right here he starts telling Mills Lane that he headbutted me. And then Mills Lane calls a timeout. You can see the blood coming down from Tyson's right eye. And Mills Lane says indeed that it was a headbutt. And at this point, the announcers for the fight start speculating, man, it would be a pretty anticlimactic way for this fight to end. If it were a headbutt, that would be, an accidental foul and kind of a no contest, like there'd be no winner. And it would be anticlimactic, but that would be a heck of a lot better than, the way that it did end, which is with Tyson being disqualified for biting Holyfield's ear. Yes, it's a fact that they butted heads. However, I've never really seen footage that shows Holyfield kind of blatantly and intentionally headbutting Tyson, as Tyson claims that he did. Now, when Tyson says that he headbutted me, I tend to take him at his word. I mean, he's a very experienced fighter at that point, and he was not really known to, make excuses. Even when he lost to Buster Douglas, he just said, yeah, he fought a great fight and I had a bad night. And he kind of said the same thing about the Holyfield fight, but he did say the headbutting was a problem. However, I do not see a lot of evidence in the footage that Holyfield intentionally headbutted him. I think maybe he came in with his head down, but that is kind of fair game. It's kind of like when Tyson would punch and then maybe like get some elbow in there. You can say that's a little dirty, but there's things you can do in combat which are acceptable, and biting people's ears is not one of them. So so I think it was the lack of training, it was the steroids, and it was the headbutting all conspired to make Tyson lose that first fight against Holyfield. Although Tyson didn't look that bad in the first fight. It was really like 50-50 that anybody could have won it. That's what makes it kind of an exciting fight. And the next ill-fated fight, Tyson Holyfield 2, Tyson looked much better conditioned. I mean, we remember it for the ear biting, but take a look at this fight. When Tyson came out in round one, it was like, actually, in the first Tyson Holyfield fight, Tyson looked not quite as chiseled as he usually is. And in the second fight, Tyson looked like perfect. And indeed, when he came out in the first round, Tyson looked incredible in terms of his movement and his speed. Because remember, Tyson was still very quick even when he got out of prison. Tyson himself said that he felt like he lost a little bit of speed. And certainly something was lost in terms of his style. He was not like throwing combinations, but his movement was good. He was dodging punches. In the second fight, Tyson dodged Holyfield's punches and he was kind of ducking them in a way that was excellent. However, once again, the headbutt and the cut open over his eye. But I'll say once again, for sure there was a headbutt, and Tyson says so, and we have to take him at his word. But I've never seen a clip where it's like, oh, look, Holyfield intentionally headbutt him. I think it's just kind of like they just kind of butt heads, and Tyson had a problem with this cut over his eye. So it was a frustration over that, and Tyson appealed to Mills Lane in this fight as to say, look, he headbutted me. Do something. I don't know what he wants Mills Lane to do to take a point off. I believe Mills Lane gave Holyfield a warning. However, in Tyson's autobiography, he says that Mills Lane was a very biased ref in favor of Holyfield, like going into the fight. Because Mills Lane had referred to Tyson as a thug and derogatory terms because, I mean, I guess Tyson gives a lot of ammunition for people to say that. But it's like, if you're a ref, you probably shouldn't, comment. So from Tyson's view, the headbutts were not addressed. Once again, we remember the ear biting, but what we don't remember is that Tyson looked good in that fight, and I think he could have won. But the bottom line is this. If Tyson had his eye cut, that might have been a reason to stop the fight, okay? And that's like very anticlimactic. But if you need to stop the fight because of a headbutt that caused an open cut, then it's just like a no contest. It's like a draw for a so-called unintentional foul. I think it would have been more honorable and obviously more respectable if the cut continued to be a problem to just like bow out of the fight and say, I can't see because of my eye, rather than to bite Holyfield's ear. And when the pandemonium erupted after the fight, then Tyson wanted to fight everybody in the ring, the cops and the security guard, and it was a big scene. And it was like, hey, you had a chance to fight like in the ring.
So here they're playing the instant replay of the second bite that Tyson took out of Holyfield's ear and the chaos which ensued after the fight was ended. Playing footage here from Gary Spencer Wilson Boxing. And everyone's in the ring and they're establishing that the fight is over. And what you're about to see is Tyson going crazy and trying to take a swing at pretty much whoever's in front of him. And here's my take on this part. You see, he actually just took a swipe at a cop. And here's my take. Does this make Tyson a tough guy that once he's disqualified, now he wants to fight and he wants to fight everybody? I don't think so. And I don't mean to be dismissive or ridicule Tyson, who really is a tough guy. Just this particular moment in his life, and I think he would admit, was not his finest, because the time to be brave and the time to be valiant was in the actual fight. He had plenty of opportunity to channel all this aggression towards his actual opponent, Holyfield, prior to taking action that obviously would have gotten him disqualified. So in my opinion, this whole act, this whole charade after the second Tyson Holyfield fight was kind of meant to like obfuscate the fact that effectively Tyson had thrown in the towel by showing that he's kind of wild and he's an animal and he's going to go after Holyfield and he's actually ready to fight him. I feel frankly like this was to cover up for the fact that Tyson basically took himself out of the fight. Whether it was through a lack of courage or he lost control. I mean, how do you bite someone's ear twice? Or you can chalk it up to maybe drug use, actually. I think that the drug use of Tyson in his career is maybe not as well known by the general public that, if he's just going into a rage based on his brain chemistry has just been messed with, that's another explanation.
Now, look, I love Mike Tyson. I don't want you to think that this is a video attacking him. I lament that this stupid ear biting has like overshadowed his legacy as a boxer. And I just saw some things in that fight. Now, Tyson himself in his autobiography recalls saying to his family, "I shouldn't have done that. My fans are going to hate me." But he wasn't really that contrite about it because he was extremely pissed about the headbutting, which is somewhat understandable. So that's my take on the Tyson Holyfield fights. My name is Michael McCara. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel.